Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. Is self-love a New Age concept, or did God design it? I think there's an answer here in Matthew 20 through 22. There actually in this reading is a lot about who's important. We see a lot of what's important and who's important here. Jesus talks about laborers in the vineyard and those that are called in at the beginning of the day, those that are called in at the 3rd hour, the 6th, the 9th, and the 11th hour, and all are negotiated for a specific wage, and at the end of the day, he pays the last in first, and he pays the first in last, and he pays all of them the exact same wage. And those that started in the early morning are upset about that, and he discusses what it really means to be a servant, to be a follower of Jesus, and what it means to be to be a serving person here. He meets two blind men by the road. I think this is really, really interesting that they call out that they want their eyes to be opened. How many people do you wish would say that, and how many people do you know that are asking that today? Really important point here in Jesus's travels here. He comes into Jerusalem. This is where he is praised. The palm branches and the coats are laid on the road, and he travels in on donkey. So he enters triumphantly into Jerusalem at this point. He enters the temple. This is where he overturns the tables and sends out the money changers and unseats the dove sellers. Heals the blind and the lame in the temple, and the chief priests he's offending friends and not making friends everywhere. He's making enemies with these chief priests who are scandalized. Children are calling him who he is, and they're upset that he's not correcting them. They're in the temple very upset that he seems to be acting with an authority that they don't think he should have. And on the way to Bethany, we have the cursing of the barren fig. After all of this, the parable of the two sons is told. They are both asked to go to work in the vineyard. One says no, but eventually goes later. And one says yes immediately and doesn't go. And Jesus's examination of that with his followers. He gives a parable of the landowner who owns a vineyard and goes away, leaving it to renters, and expects the harvest and sends slaves to collect that, who are killed, and eventually sends his son, who is also killed. And the discussion there about what the landowner is going to do with those renters. There is a touch note here again of you can lose your place. You can be cast out of the vineyard even though you had a place there. He talks about the stone, that he who falls on the stone will be broken to pieces, and he who that falls on, it will scatter like dust. That is a really important point to look at. Again, making the chief priests and the Pharisees angry. Then he goes on into the parable of the marriage feast, and those who were invited didn't feel like coming when it was time. And so the slaves go out and gather anybody, both evil and not evil. Anybody who happens to be out, they gather in to eat the feast. And then there is a separating again. In 22:14, Jesus says, many are called and few are chosen. So we're seeing again this idea, another way to tell these people that there will be a great sorting and you want to be in the right group. The Pharisees try to trap Jesus with a quiz on paying the tribute to Caesar. And the Sadducees then try to trap him with a question on marriage and what happens if a woman has been passed on brother to brother to brother, and who is she married to after death. And then we have this really, what I love about this whole area of chapters. The Pharisees come to Jesus and say, all right, so we've got all of this law written down, and all of this that you find precious and more important than what we have come up with in our dogma. So what's the most important? If you could follow one law that God has set down, what's the most important? And Jesus says, the most important, this is in verse 22:37, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. And then as a second piece to that, he says, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I think that I've thought a lot about these two verses together, and I think they're so beautiful and so simple. And I think that currently we have people that oversimplify it and run around saying, well, God is love. That's the only thing you need to know. And that gets taken here in this verse, because if you just love, then that's fine, and God will accept anything else that you do. You can break any other law, but that's not what this is saying here. I think the key is actually in the second verse. So it says, love your neighbor as yourself. But it doesn't say anything about how to love myself. And I think that is really important in this day and age. We talk about self-love, and we talk about it in this, we need to have a good self-image. We need to have a good self-esteem. And this is really, really important. But the problem is that we tell young people usually, that their self-image and their self-worth is attached to various things on earth and things that are of man. So what other people think of you is how you should love yourself and how you should define yourself, or what the culture says is valued is how you should find value in yourself. And so it's this nebulous, all over the map way to find value. And if you can't find value in yourself, you can't love yourself. So I think we need to go back to the first verse if we want to understand how to love ourselves. The first verse is the most important. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. So what does that look like? If we give everything that we are, if we devote all of our mind to God, if we devote everything that comes through our heart, that issues out of our heart space, that we hold dear to us, is if that is pinned on God, focused on God, loving God, and if our soul is pointed towards God, every little bit of it, if we give all of everything that we are to God, I believe what Jesus is saying here is that's how we love ourself. When we teach a young child that their value and their identity is wrapped up in Christ, it's wrapped up in them following this verse. It's wrapped up in them loving the Lord their God with everything in their heart, everything in their soul, and everything in their mind. And when they do that, they are loving themselves. When you do that, you are hearing God's will for you. You are hearing God's cheat sheet. You are hearing how to navigate in your life. You are feeling God's love in and all around you because you are walking on His path. And that is how you experience love for yourself. So then we go to the second verse. Love your neighbor as yourself. So if I love myself by loving God with all of my heart, all of my mind, and all of my soul, and I turn and then love my neighbor the same way I love myself, it creates a powerful community where I can be a model for somebody who does not know where to attach their value. I am loving them through my love for myself. I am loving them through my love for God that creates my love of self. And I I watched growing up, I grew up in a lot of different churches, and I watched as people were taught in church dogma that you sacrificed yourself to love others. You emptied yourself for others. And I don't believe that's how we're designed. To empty, we're not designed to love people from an empty well. Because if you're loving God with everything that you have, God fills that well and you have an abundance to love other people. We aren't supposed to be not taking care of ourselves, putting ourselves last, never caring for our bodies, never caring for our hearts, never caring for our minds or souls, because that is how we have become incredibly unhealthy. We have become incredibly unhealthy in our cells, in our living physical body, because we put ourselves last. We are putting our minds, our mental health last, running and doing for others. And we put our spirit last, and we begin to be frail where God intends us to be strong. So the metaphor of the mom who is supposed to put the oxygen mask on her face first before she puts it on the child's face in plain trouble. Because if you can't put if you don't have oxygen, you can't think clearly and you can't save other people. This verse encompasses that. You need to love yourself first by giving yourself completely over to loving your God in heaven. And through that love, you have boundless energy. But this means that we care for ourselves. We care for the bodies, the gifts in our talents, our souls, our hearts, our minds. All of these are gifts from God, and we dishonor Him, and we are not loving Him when we spit on those gifts. So this is a fascinating verse. It's one of my favorite two-verse, one part, two-part whams here. I mean, this is so powerful that if we ponder it and we think about what the model of self-love is and how we are to care for ourselves and what our health should look like, here it is. Are you doing that? Are you giving everything you have to love your God and then experiencing self-love through that? Are you putting yourself first because He is first? And then are you turning and loving everybody else around you through that? Or are you trying to love people through your own human, limited, not attached to God self to be good? Is it hollow? Is it tired? Is your love exhausted and empty? It's a totally different way to walk. And if we just follow these two, yes, everything else gets followed. All the other parts of the law and the rules that God had for us throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, they get followed because of this focus on God. God is love, but He isn't just love from a human aspect. And it is powerful. I pray that God is blessing you today. I pray that He turns you to focus all of your love on Him so that you can feel true self-love and self-worth and understand your identity and understand what your health really, really can be. And I pray that He gives you the curiosity to dig into His Word and start looking for yourself and to reach out for that personal relationship with Him. And I pray that He brings you back to be curious and to study with me on another day. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.